Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. From a subscriber request, shout out to you. We are talking about how to counter hand control, and it's a really great idea because with set 9 just being released yesterday officially, hand control is being pushed pretty hard in set 9. Obviously, Mercenary Tau just got banned, so that's one of the factors, but the other factor is there are a few strong hand control archetypes coming out in set 9, so in today's video, we're talking about that. Guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you want to support the channel, lots of ways you can do that. Number one, we got the Patreon down below. Make sure to check that out if you're trying to get your game up. And if you're here watching the strategy series, you're probably trying to do that, so you might want to check that out down below. Secondly, we have the Crossroad TCG merch store. The stuff looks dope, and it really helps the channel out a lot. And finally, guys, if you want to buy the cards you see in today's video, make sure to use my link to either TCG Player or Beer Collectibles in the description. With that being said, we're getting right into this. So, what are the different types of hand control you may come across? So, actually, before we even get into the set 9 stuff, the Twisted Justice Fused Zamasu was abused with 3-drop Goku Black rare from the draft box in the deck that won the most recent event, Pro Play Tour Orlando. Now, that was before set 9, and that was before the ban of Mercenary Tau. Mercenary Tau was actually pretty popular in side decks of that tournament because it was the last tournament you could actually side deck Tau at. So, with that being said, Blue-Green Piccolo, who also inherently negs the opponent 4 cards from their hand as a leader by itself, was using this engine for hand control, and it won a pretty big prestigious tournament with its silver bullet running around. That's honestly kind of crazy to think about. So knowing that off the bat, hand control is really strong, and hand control is generally strong in Dragon Ball Super anyway, because this game a lot of times comes down to who has more combo power. So if your opponent's ripping your cards from your hand and you're not able to recoup, that is going to be a problem for you when you're trying to defend the lethal shot on your life. But we also see that Android 13 got a pretty decent amount of support in set 9. There is a deck roaming around that has the potential to rip your hand to 0, but I wouldn't be too scared about that. I don't want anyone to freak out about that because from my experience, ripping your hand to 0 on turn 1 is pretty inconsistent. They can do it, they can pop off, but they have to see a lot of specific cards on turn 1, but still know that it is a pretty powerful hand control deck to be aware of. And guys, we have Cell Unthinkable Perfection. The new Cell / Android 20 archetype with Successor they're pushing pretty hard is very, very powerful. I posted a deck list on the Patreon. Again, if you want to check it out down below, I pretty much explain the deck and also explain some ways to counter the deck, so you might want to check that out. But with that being said, we're getting into this video so you guys can see some generic ways to counter those cards. So off the bat, I feel like I should mention it. It's not super generic in a sense, but Effect Negation is going to be really, really good against hand control because none of the new hand control cards, the Cell 9 drop, the Android 13 7 drop, Twisted Justice Fused Zamasu, none of them have deflect. So if you're in a deck that can play Cold Bloodlust, maybe you're playing Lemon Line Golden Frieza, maybe you're playing Green Yellow Broly with the new errata, that's going to be an option for you. Unfortunately, it is at 1. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, but it is at 1 in the current format. And Frost Lily Poison is another really good option, and Frost Lily Poison is tied to blue yellow in a sense, but it's actually a bit more generic than people give it credit for. You guys may have been seeing a ton of tricolor decks either on other YouTube channels or on Facebook groups. Tricolor is made a lot more easy now that we have multicolors in the game and multicolor super combos, because you can charge, let's say you want to charge blue yellows, and you have your blue yellow check land, and then maybe you charge like reds next to that. You charge like your blue yellows, and then you charge your straight reds next to that. Well, you can play the red yellow Whis super combo to guarantee 1 card arrivals, so you could arrival, let's say, your Beerus No Holds Barred. But that's just an example of like what a tricolor deck would look like, and you can play Frost Poison in a deck like that. Maybe you're charging red yellows and splashing blue for Bean, whatever the case is, you'll have the ability to use Frost Poison, so it is a bit more quote-unquote generic than people sometimes give it credit for, so I wanted to mention that. Next up, we got a few cool tech cards. So the first one I'll talk about, King Yama Soul Supervisor. It's a 2-drop 10k auto. When you play this card, you may choose 2 non-black battle cards from your opponent's drop area and place them at the bottom of your opponent's deck in any order. If you do, draw 1 card. So this card serves a lot of purposes. So there's one for blue and one for yellow. So while there's not one of these for every color, the one for yellow is a Krillin, by the way. While there's not one for every color, it is, again, pretty splashable because you don't really see monocolor decks anymore unless you're playing mono black. So first of all, it draws a card, so that's already good against hand control. But what it does is it takes 2 cards from opponent's drop area, puts them back to the deck. That's relevant against Cell. That's relevant against Android 13. Let's say Android 13 did not see the cards they needed to see to awaken turn 1. They didn't see both on Android 14 and 15 they could get to the drop area easily. If you're grinding out with them, you can shuffle back their awakening pieces from the drop area back into the deck. Likewise, you can also shuffle back their Union Absorb pieces because they do Union Absorb from the drop area, so that's pretty good there as well. Against Cell, they play a lot of their battle cards out of the drop area. That's how they get a lot of their value. They don't plus in their hand size because when they add a card to their hand with a Cell effect, they have to discard a card, but those cards mostly play out of the drop area, so they're not really losing hand size per se. So with that in mind, if you play King Yama or the Krillin, put those back into the deck, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Sorrowful Strike Tien is another option. They call this the Guardian combos. Every color has one. Basically, when you combo this card, you can discard a card, then you can choose a battle card in your opponent's drop area, return it to their deck, and then your opponent shuffles. This is a not so great alternative because it does combo, so you lose that card, and then you have to pitch an additional card, so you're losing multiple cards in that exchange. And against hand control, that's not really what you want to do, but I did want to mention it just in case, you know, you absolutely can't play King Yama or you absolutely can't play the Krillin. I wanted to make sure you guys knew about the quote-unquote Guardian combos. Next up, Dark Power Black Mass Sand. This card is super good against Cell in the right decks. Firstly, because again, Cell is playing cards out of the drop area via a lot of activate mains, which is a non-keyword skill. They're generally always less than 15,000 power, so your opponent playing a battle card by a non-keyword skill is going to trigger this, and the Cell player is going to draw 2. I did just mention how Cell, you know, doesn't hard plus on the Unawakened side, but they still don't really have a ton of cards in hand, so forcing them to pitch 2 cards with the Black Mass Sand is going to be really, really good. It's a bit hard for them to answer this in the early game. Like, if you can drop this on turn 1, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Turn 2, if you're going first, is also pretty helpful. Going second's kind of rough because they are green. They do have access to a lot of removal, so sometimes it can be too late. Maybe if you can afford to charge a regular energy turn 1, like a non-multicolor, play this out, and then turn 2 charge your multi, that could be a pretty good strategy. But the ability to take a life and self-awaken when you attack with this is also going to be pretty high value, because in the Android hand control deck, they do have the Super 17 9-drop successor. When they play it, they crit you down to 4 life. Whether you're at 5, 6, 7, 8 life, they're critting you down to 4. So any ways you can get those lives to your hand instead of just having your opponent crit them for you, that's going to be pretty high value in that matchup. So Black Mass Sand serves a lot of purposes in that matchup in particular. Now, I know everyone hates when we talk about draft box cards, but I would be a fool if I did not mention Great Ape Son Goku Saiyan Instincts. In the past, this has been seen as a very specific card tied to yellow decks, but against hand control, it's actually very generic, again, because it's a card that you can use without actually having yellow anywhere in your deck. And if your opponent's pitching cards from your hand, if you just start discarding Great Ape Son Goku Saiyan Instincts, you're going to be able to draw some of those cards back, which is going to be really good. It is a generic way to do that. Again, I know people don't love when we talk about draft box cards, but I have to mention it. It's just a really good card against hand control. If you have them already, or if you have access to them, it's a good card. You're going to want to consider side decking for hand control if you feel like you want to get your hand size back up. But next up, I do actually have a budget alternative to Son Goku Saiyan Instincts if you are in red, and that is Frost Before the Storm. I actually like this card a lot. It's not as good as Saiyan Instincts, but it's also what's called a mana sink. They call Great Ape Son Goku Saiyan Instincts a mana sink because if you have nothing better to do with the energy on that turn and you don't really need to be super defensive, you can just tap energy to draw cards, and Frost does the same thing. So he has an activate main. Sorry for the blurry image, but the cards don't have great scans yet. So activate main, once per turn, pay a red energy, draw 1 card. You can do that every single turn this guy survives in the field. That's really cool. Again, that mana sink effect. If you have 1 random energy every single turn, you just draw 1 off of it. That's pretty cool. Auto, when this card's removed from the battle area by an opponent's skill, which green does all the time. Choose 1 Chaos Beam Frost from your deck or hand, play it, then shuffle your deck if you look through it. So it's pretty cool because if they want to remove your mana sink, you basically get a free 15k body out of it to then put pressure on them. And then the Chaos Beam Frost actually lets you minus 5,000 the battle card every single turn, and that can be good again for sniping off those 1-drop 17s that your Cell opponent might be playing. If you have a few of these on the board, you can minus the 3-drop Goku draft box rare, so that can work. And then when the Chaos Beam Frost is removed, you can play the 3-drop 30k vanilla Frost from the deck. So I mean, it's a pretty big engine, but it is an option. You know, at the very least, you could play Frost and then maybe like 1 copy of Chaos Beam Frost. So that could definitely be an option for you if you are in red and afraid of hand control. Next up, I want to talk about removal. So Cease to Exist, every single color got a card like this where it's just a generic 3-cost extra card, gets around anything ignoring barrier. Cease to Exist is particularly amazing because it lets you choose 2 battle cards and give them minus 25. So for 3 energy, you can remove 14 energy worth of battle cards, which is pretty insane to think about. Like, killing off 2 Twisted Justice Fusamasus, pretty crazy. Likewise, you can kill off the 6-drop Cell Successor. You can kill off some of the things in the Android 13 deck. So removal is really important because the hand control boss monsters also generally put a lot of pressure back on you. And likewise, if they have a 9-drop Cell in rest mode, you give it -25. It's a 5k battle card. Are they really going to defend it with combo power? Probably not. Dimensional Banisher Fu is just a really generic form of removal. And guys, if you're playing against Cell, please remove the 6-drop Successor from the board. The card is scary. The card says when you remove it, they will draw 3, but it's so worth it. Let them draw 3. It's probably going to be a bunch of dead 10Ks anyway, and then they're going to have to somehow rebuild their Successor chain. So guys, don't be afraid to remove the 6-drop Cell Successor. You heard it here first. And finally, the last card I'm talking about, Mach Speed Kaioken Son Goku. So you might be wondering, like, how is this card particularly good against hand control? Well, this is a special shout out to the Cooler players out there. I myself am messing around with Cooler. I'm a big fan of it. But guys, if you're playing Cooler, whether you're going first or second, you can set it up in such a way where you counterplay with Mach Speed Kaioken against Cell, and when they play their 17 out of the drop area and then play their 3-drop Cell Android Absorber out of the drop area, you can counterplay with Mach Speed. You can neg them both and get them both off the board. Yes, you're still going to discard a card thanks to Cell Android Absorber's effect, but you'll also draw a card as Cooler, so you pretty much offset that, and you get a 3-drop 15k body to pressure them with. So I thought it was pretty much worth mentioning. But guys, those are all the cards that I came up with for countering hand control. I'm sure there's a lot more, so if you have a suggestion, leave it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.